All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We're very excited to host today's technical webinar, Understanding the Windows Server Administration Fundamentals, Part 3. And presenting today's topic is Magdi Sifton. Magdi is Chief Engineer, Information Technology Professional, and Network Security Consultant with 20 years of experience in the IT operations and 14 years as an IT technical trainer and learning consultant. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps build innovative learning organizations in the workplace by structuring a smarter workforce, supporting changes, and driving growth. We do offer over 2,000 IT, business, and soft skills courses available to organizations around the world, encompassing technologies like big data, cloud, mobility, etc. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to reach optimal performance results and address challenges. So, why should you attend this webinar? Windows Server Administration is a Windows computer networking topic designed to understand server administration. Part 3 of Windows Server Administration Fundamentals is designed to guide you on topics like name resolution, the functioning of Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, Active Directory users, server roles, storage, remote access, virtualization, web services, etc. It does intend to provide you with a perfect understanding of the roles and responsibilities of a server administrator. Now, I'll just give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To start with, you do have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the Escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Please feel free to submit any questions that you do have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. A PDF copy of today's slides are also in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. And now in just a few moments, I'm going to pass this over to Magdi, who will be presenting today's topic. Okay, Magdi, go ahead. You are live.
Thank you, Stacy. Welcome, everyone, to the third part of Understanding the Windows Server Administration Fundamentals. Today's webinar is dedicated to server administrators and those who are intended to be systems administrators and who are wanting to be cloud administrators. Let's discuss our agenda for today. We are going to be discussing the name resolution, the DHCP, directory services, Active Directory users, groups, and computers, group policies, users' rights and permissions, FSMO rules and global catalog, Windows Server services, and finally, I'm going to answer any questions that you are having for me. So this webinar is dedicated to those who finally earned their A+ certification from CompTIA or Network Plus from CompTIA or Microsoft Networking Fundamentals, Microsoft Technology Associate Certification, Exam 98-366. This webinar is an overview for CompTIA Server Plus SK0 98-004 and Microsoft MTA exam 98-365. So if you would like to go with Microsoft, your exam is going to be 98-365. If you go with CompTIA Server Plus, your exam will be SK0-004, and those are just steps in your career, your professional career, towards more certifications and more advance with your IT career. Let's start by name resolutions. Name resolution is a very old technique that has been used in order to map a name to an IP address. In the very first beginning, when the internet or the networks were small and you have very limited number of computers and users over your network, you can have something called Windows Internet Name Services. That is WINS. WINS usually used a server that contain a database of an IP addresses and map those IP addresses to a computer names or a server names. This is a legacy technique right now, because now the internet has very large amount of computers. We have billions of users all over the internet and billions of handheld devices and computers that are spreading all over, and we need more techniques that advance it over WINS that can be used and to help us to map the name into an IP address. WINS usually will be having a database, looks like what we are having here. It has an IP address, then that IP address is having a name for a server, and of course it has a description for that server or that computer, to be specific. To DNS in the modern network today, we are using something called DNS, which is mapping the logical addresses to a computer name. One of the cons of the WINS system that it's only register the Windows operating system, and that's it. You cannot register any other operating system computer like Linux or other things. You have to add those manually, not to be added directly by the server itself in an automatic operation. DNS is the most advanced name resolution right now in the modern network. DNS is used to map the name of the computer or a server to an IP address. And for example, if I am going to type www.google.com and then I'm going to hit enter, that's in my browser, and my browser is going to send a request to the internet service provider's ISP and asking it, oh, do you have the address, the IP address of google.com? The internet service provider server doesn't have that. So it will forward that request to a root server. What is a root server? A root server is a type of server that contain all the database of the world IP address. It registers everything there. The root server will respond to the IP, the ISP DNS server request with the google.com or www.google.com IP address. That request will be handed to the user computer and will be cached on the local computer database. So now, instead of every time your computer is going to go through that process, it takes like milliseconds in order to finish. It's directly now going to go to google.com because it cached the address, which is 173.194.115.96. DNS is a short for a domain name system. It has a hierarchical built for a server and a client network, for a distributed database, and manage that the domain and host and mapping those to IP addresses. Below that root domain or root DNS servers, there is the top level domains such as .com, .edu, .org, .net. Also, it can be added the two country codes such as .uk, .us, .canada, or .ca. Let's discuss the DNS zones. Two main zones usually we are having when we are looking at the DNS. And for any server administrator, they are obligated to know those exactly like their names. One of them is the forward lookup zone, and the other one is the reverse lookup zone. The forward lookup zone, like, for example, Microsoft.com or technet.microsoft.com or msdn.microsoft.com. This is a forward lookup zone, which have the most of the resources and the records of the zone. The reverse lookup zone is defined by a reverse lookup format. I'm going to be illustrating more in the upcoming slide, but in this slide you will be knowing that if you are a user and you want to go to Microsoft.com or nwtraders.msft, you will be typing nwtraders.msft. Your computer doesn't know the IP address of this server. It will be forward your request to the DNS server that will be resolving this name to an IP address, and then going to hand the computer the IP address in order for the browser to go to the internet and browse the nwtraders.msft website. Now, for the reverse lookup zone, one of the things when you are trying to do that, you are trying to discovering a name for a specific IP address. You are going to be asking the DNS server about this IP address. Your request going to have a response for the IP address 192.168.1.50 will be nwtraders.msft. This is the reverse lookup zone. Those zones, as I illustrated, are the most important zones for the DNS services and server. For those zones to work and perform, and for any DNS server to work and to perform, it has to have records. You have three main records that any DNS server must have. The A record, and the A record is just will work in the forward lookup zone and will point a domain to an IP address, which means if your computer is going to send a domain name to the DNS server, in order for it to be resolved to an IP address, the DNS server will look in the database that has the IP addresses mapped to that domain and will respond to the computer or the user's request with the IP address. The A record work in the forward lookup zone. The CNAME records usually will be specifying a domain as an alias for another domain. And if you ever tried to use a command line to look up yahoo.com, yahoo.com is a distributed server, multiple servers that doesn't have the name yahoo.com. Yahoo.com is actually the published name for multiple other servers. So we call those alias servers, alias names, alias domains. Then we are having the pointer records or the PTR records. PTR records, they are working in the reverse DNS lookup or the reverse lookup zone. They are using the IP address to get the name, the domain name. For the DNS to use a pointer record, an A record must exist first in order for the PTR to be used. Let's move to another type of server that we are most likely familiar with, called a DHCP server. A DHCP, also called Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol services. Any services need a server to provide those services. A DHCP server is automatically assigning an IP address and other related parameters like a DNS server and a gateway or a default gateway to a computer. In an operation or a process of 4 steps, starting with a computer that is a DHCP client. When you power your computer and you try to connect your computer, it's adjusted to obtain the IP automatically from the network. Your computer is going to send a request called a DHCP discover. A DHCP discover is going to trying to discover the network and find and allocate a DHCP servers. If this discover request was succeeded and the DHCP servers were located, then it's going to be offer a DHCP IP address or a configuration. A DHCP request from the client will be sent, and then from the server it will be sending a DHCP acknowledgement. Those processes and those communications are usually happening through two ports and using one protocol. They are using a UDP protocol. The client sends their messages through port 67, while the servers responding through port 68. So for any administrator who are handling firewalls, they must know that those two ports and that protocol must be added as an exception in the firewall. Let's move to the directory service. Directory service is a service that stores and organizes the hierarchical build of the company or an organization. It provides access for multiple information about person or computer or the whole department. For example, if I would like to know something about the marketing or some specific person who is a member in the marketing department, like Jean here, I will be looking in the directory services of the company. I will be located Jean. I will be located the email of Jean. I will be knowing which department Jean is belonging to. It can also listing his phone number and his job title. Directory services usually for managing, simplifying the management and allocations for users and computers, volumes, folders, printers, any device or any object over your company directory can be located via the directory services. Directory services has multiple providers. We have known Novell as one of the providers or products that providing directory services. NetWare as an operating system that providing directory services. Linux was multiple, Apple, and one of the most popular in our modern computing networking systems is Microsoft Active Directory. Active Directory service from Microsoft. We are looking at a solution that has been developed along the years after Windows NT. Active Directory advanced now to be part of the cloud and part of the Azure solution. Active Directory is built and created by Microsoft and have lots of compatibility and including multiple services under the one umbrella. One of them is a Light Directory Access Protocol. Light Directory Access Protocol is a software protocol for enabling anyone to locate any organizations, individuals, or other resources, such as file, devices, over the network. You can also locate printers, shared partitions and volumes. Also, you can locate those resources over the internet or the company intranet. The LDAP is a smaller version of the DAP, what we call Directory Access Protocol. Active Directory using some sort of an encryption called Kerberos. Kerberos is a single sign-on authentication. Kerberos is a computer network authentication protocol that works on a basis of tickets that allow node communications over non-secure network to prove their identity to one another in a secure manner. Which means if you are having a laptop and you are connecting or try to connect to the company network, and I don't know if your computer is safe or not, you are going to be asked to join the domain, and once you do, some sort of an encryption called Kerberos is going to be establishing to secure your communication between the server and your computer. And you start to type in your logon credentials, a username and a password, to single sign on to the network. With that single sign on, you will be able to access to multiple services, shared partitions, or shared folders, or shared resources. With that single sign on, you can perform some function depends on your rights and permission that assigned to you by the systems administrators. For the Active Directory service to work, it has to be having a DNS server rule on the same computers that have Active Directory. A central location for a network administration and delegation of authority. Active Directory require a DNS on the same computer and require a domain controller to hold that Active Directory DNS integrated zone. And you can add that zone to our reverse lookup zone and forward lookup zone. One of the most important roles that can gather two of the most important server roles together is Active Directory integrated zone with the DNS services. Now let's move to the Active Directory logical structure. And lots of people get confused when we talk about the Active Directory structures. And in order to be dividing the Active Directory into logical structure and physical structure. Active Directory domains, and you can see here a symbol of a domain is a triangle, A domain can have multiple users, can have multiple objects like computers, printers, can have multiple OUs, and any OUs can have users, computers, printers, any object that can be there. So a domain by itself, it is the smallest logical structure unit of the Active Directory. Two or more domains can form something called tree. A tree is two or more domains that they are working together in the same namespace or contiguous namespace, linked together in a trust hierarchy. So you can have a domain here that's working with that domain and they can form a tree. And if I would like to give an example here, if you ever went to netcomlearning.com and if we ever have that domain, metaphorically speaking, that say sales.netcomlearning.com, that's another domain in the hierarchical structure. Those domains can form a tree under the same exact trust hierarchy. If you are having two or more trees that they are collected together and sharing one of the most common objects and resources called global catalog and also a directory schema, those are we are going to discuss later on. Then you are having a forest. A forest is a collection of two or more trees that they are sharing global catalog. That's number one. Number two, directory schema. So now you know that what is the Active Directory logical structure. Domain is the smallest logical structure unit of the Active Directory logical structure. Two or more domains that can share trust hierarchy and namespace that can form a tree. Multiple trees that share global catalog, that's number one. Number two, directory schema. Then you are having a forest. To allow users in one domain to access resources of another domain, you must have a trust relationships. Now, let's move to the Active Directory physical structures. We discussed before the Active Directory logical structure, and we are just discussed that. If we move to the physical structure of the Active Directory, how we are going to describe that? Physical structure is what you can handle by your hand, what you can put your hand on and you feel and touch. With that said, number one, you have to have a site. A site is a geographical place that can have one or more domain controller. if you have multiple sites connected via a high-speed WAN link, this can consider multiple sites from the Active Directory physical structure. So one of the smallest physical structure, the smallest unit, in order for you to describe the physical structure of the Active Directory is your domain controller. Multiple domain controller in the same site, in the same geographical place, it's called site. If you have multiple sites, then you must have a WAN link or high-speed WAN link that connect those two sites in order for them to work together. Let's wrap this up. A site is one or more IP address subnet mask that connected by high-speed link or WAN link, and usually they are located in the same geographical place. A domain controller, it is a Windows Server integrated zone with a DNS server and located in the same geographical site. It can be replicating the accounts of users between sites and allow access of the resources between the sites via the WAN link. Let's discuss users, Active Directory users. If we took a look on Patrick Regan as an Active Directory user here, we can be having his name, first name, last name, the display name on the company director, what's his description, and where is his office located, his phone number, his email, and the web page to his profile, for example. Also, it can have multiple other tabs that we can click off. For example, if he is a member of a group or an organization, what is his profile? Is he allowed to have a remote desktop profile or not? Can he have a dial-in to the company network? If I am the administrator of the Active Directory, I can also review the sessions that Patrick has established to the company network. Users' accounts usually enable the user to log on to the domain. Associated with the user account is a user profile. A user profile is a collection of folders, data that store the user's current desktop environment and application. User's profile also that I'm pointing on right now also can be having all the records of all the network connections that established before when the user logged to using his computer or multiple computers to the network. It remembered the mapped drives to the shared folders. And for that, when the user tried to log on from multiple locations using different computers, it will also pull down those shared partitions or shared folders or mapped partitions and every single application that this user is using, and will be giving him the same desktop environment that he used to work on. All his files or her files will be on the computer that they are working no matter what they are logging in from. Users' profiles also can be used for auditing. And for the user's profile, you have two users profile type or two users type, local users account and domain users account. And we, as a server administrators or systems administrators, we are mostly use domain users accounts. And when we are talked about users profile, and we talked about the profile that can be logged to from any other location and can be pulled down so the user can be working on their shared partitions or shared folders and have their applications there. That means it is a domain user account. Let's discuss together Active Directory computers. Computers account are like users account. Computers account provide authentication, means for authentication and auditing the computer access to the network. For example, if I have 50 computer network and I have multiple wireless access points for my organization network, and I must be having, for a security reason, a computer access group that allow that computer or multiple computers or those specific 50 computers to access to the Active Directory. For security reason, I will create computer accounts in the Active Directory. I will register every single computer with a unique name in the Active Directory. Each Windows computer will be granted access to a unique or their resources. A unique resources depends on the assigned resources for the computer or the group that this computer belongs to. For example, a computer here called 2012 R2, and this computer can be a server, is different than the lab 15S PT. For example, this is a lab test and this is a server computer. Both of them can be added to a different groups, and each group can have different rights and different permission to access to a network resource different from each other. To wrap this up, a computer account can be used for auditing, can be specifying by the system administrator, and to be secure and to know exactly which computer is used to log on to specific resource and by which users this computer has been used. Active Directory group. As we discussed users and computers, both of them can be added to groups. The groups usually is an Active Directory groups, and they are members, can collect members of users and computers. Groups usually are either local group or domain group, and in the domain level we call those domain local security group, or domain local groups. The global group, for example, is different than the security group. A group is a form of a container that store users, computers, information, and just instead of just listing it, it's simplifying the administration over these groups and over those users, instead of giving each user permission or right over a specific resource. This user or group of users can be granted one permission over the same resource. And for example, if me and Stacy are working on the same project and we are requiring access to the company share in order to share our resources together and our file together, so I will ask the network administrator to give us a shared partition or a mapped drive in order for us to share our files and collaborate our work together. And he will be adding us to a group, and if that group will expand to be having Gaurav, for example, and we'll be having Susan and Sarah, then instead of applying the same group policy and same permission on each person, it's going to be simplified to just push those group policy on just one group of people. We are going to discuss the group policy next. One of the group policy most recognized and very recognized worldwide is the maximum password age. And for most of you that have emails, usually the email server will ask you to change your password every 3 months. The group policy is going to be one of the most powerful features in the Active Directory. It is very common for the server administrators to use to control the workflow of group of people. Group policy provides centralized management over the people or group of people, and for the operating system configuration and how the environment, the desktop environment can be looks like. One of them also will be the password, how long days will be going until the password will expire for a certain group of users. The group policy can be set locally to the workstation or can be set on the domain level. We can also set the group policy on the site level, which is, as we explained, the physical structure of the Active Directory, or the domain level, or the OU, the organizational unit within the Active Directory. Generally speaking, you will not find as many settings locally as you will be finding on the site or a domain, or even the OU level. The group policy usually will be applied over the site, domain, and OU. For those group policy to work effectively, you must have users' rights and permissions. Users' rights and permissions are what the group policies will be applied on. Precisely what a user can or cannot be doing or use the system resources can be assigned by these two. What is the right? The right is what the user is authorized to perform a single action or multiple actions to a computer. For example, if I have the right to log on to the network, or if I have the right to use the internet, or if I have the right to print, while the permission is defined by access to an object. And for example, you have access to the network, that's a right. Can you have access and use the NTFS partition and the mapped drive over the network? Oh, maybe not. Maybe someone is working on some project and they don't want you to log on to their partition or to map the drive. So that is, you must have a permission. You have to ask for a permission. That's how the things are. Users can be accessed to an object using the ACL, what they are required, what they are authorized to perform on some object, using the access control list. Access control list, and remember that the ACL is something Microsoft is using, any network administrator is using, server administrator is using. ACL is a global name, and every single one in the security field is using. Let's discuss the FSMO roles for the Active Directory. What are the FSMO roles? The FSMO roles usually is distributing some roles over the Active Directory environment, so it can give us flexible operations over our domain or forest. That's why we call it Flexible Single Master Operations rules, FSMO rules. Some of people also call them Operation Master rules. Let's see what we are having. Schema Master is one per forest, per the whole forest, that control and handles update and modifications to the Active Directory schema. The Domain Name Master, it's one per forest. It's control the addition or the removal of domains from the forest if present in the domain root or the root domain. The BDC emulator is one per the domain. It's a short of primary domain controller, which was used in the NT environment, and that has been changed to the primary server afterwards, and it is the timekeeper or the master time server within the domain. The red master is one per the domain. It's allocating the pools of the unique identifiers to domain controllers for use when creating an object. The infrastructure master is one per the domain. It synchronizes across domains. The group membership changes. The infrastructure master cannot run on a global catalog server unless all the domain controllers are global catalog servers. What is a global catalog? The global catalog is usually a server or a domain controller that replicate partial attributes of other servers and domain controllers over the forest. It also copy, like for example here, it holds a copy of itself, which is domain P, and also host a partial attribute set of another domain controller called domain A, or domain A that's hosted on another domain controller. It supports queries for objects like printers and other stuff, shared partitions, users all over the network. A global catalog replicates those information of every object in the tree and the forest. By the default, it is created automatically on the very first domain controller in the forest. Finally, let's talk about the services that Windows Server can provide. Usually, Windows Server has more than what mentioned here, but it also can perform much more. What we are having here is just samples, and we can see here centralized manageability and security through Active Directory services that integrated with a DNS, Active Directory certificate services that can sign your emails and secure your communications, Active Directory federation services that can allow trust between multiple domains and forests, Active Directory rights management services that can allow users to have the rights and manage those rights over the resources of the network, the application services for that any application server that can host file and storage services for those people who are having multiple resources over the network for their shared partitions and mapped drive, virtualization services, network policy and access services, print and document services, remote desktop services, web services through IIS or Internet Information Service, Windows Deployment Services, WDS, Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, and multiple network services. I apologize for the sirens here in New York City, and we were airing directly from Netcom Learning in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me today, and Stacy, you can have the mic.
Thank you so much, Magdi Siffin. That was so informative, and we want to remind all of our attendees that we do have a comprehensive portfolio for Windows Server 2016 training options. You can check about all of those classes right there up on your screen. And we'd like to remind you to join us to celebrate a month of lifelong learning. Enroll for any technical course and get $500 off. From Microsoft to Cisco to CISP, all classes delivered in person by top-notch instructors in instructor-led classrooms or live online. For a limited time, sign up from thousands of courses and save $1,000. And don't forget to use our promo code LEARNING. Technical skills are necessary to empower your career, but do you need to improve or upgrade your leadership skills as well to accelerate your career? Along with your technical abilities, develop the skills you need to manage yourself, others, and business better. Welcome to Starter Learning, a collaborative knowledge platform bringing the world's best business and leadership insights from Fortune 1000 leaders, best-selling authors, and Ivy League professors. Further, if you are interested in learning from the top American leaders, please log on to our e-learning platform, www.starterlearning.com, and you can avail the special promo meant for first-time users. Use your coupon code STARTER10 and begin your leadership journey right now. And now we are going to launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. So please take a few minutes to fill that out. And we do have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register. We want to thank you all for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.